Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories. If you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, today's first story comes from Spirited Shelter 4655, who says, "Am I the arsehole here for buying a hot tub after my brother's friend's parents kept refusing to allow him or anyone else in their pool that my brother helped to buy? My brother Pete, 14, and his friends Chris and John, both 14, got the idea in the middle of June to buy a pool for the rough summer we usually have because the local community pool is being shut down. When Pete or his friends couldn't convince anyone to buy it for them, they got motivated to work for it. Pete mowed lawns and did other yard work around the county, and the other two did their own work, and after a few weeks, they pooled their money together and were able to buy a cheap above-ground pool. Me and Chris and John's parents were really impressed and thought they deserved it after working for it. We all agreed to set up the pool in Chris's backyard because their backyard is the biggest. They filled it up and did all the work for it, and the first weekend it was available, Pete and his friends all hung out in the pool. The problem is, that was the only time Pete or John has been in the pool. Chris apparently is allowed to go in whenever, but nobody else. His parents have been asked multiple times and they've always shot down. One time Pete ended up sneaking into the pool while I was at work, and when Chris's dad found him out there, he came out and yelled at him. Chris was in the water too, according to Pete. He and John were obviously confused, so when I went to talk with Chris's parents about Pete sneaking into the pool, I asked why they weren't allowed in at all. Chris's dad kept harping on about the fact that Pete went in without permission, which I understand, but what I don't understand is why whenever they ask to come over and swim, they're never allowed to. They both explained it's a liability reason, meaning if anything were to happen to anyone in their pool, like if someone drowned, they don't want to be responsible, and it's easier to just not allow anyone but their son in the water. But these are teenagers, not toddlers, and they all know how to swim. At the end of the conversation, Chris's dad was like, "The pool is on my property, and we used all our water to fill it up, so we decide what to do with it." I raised my voice a little bit by reminding them that they didn't buy that pool. It belongs to their son, my brother, and John. I understand it's their property, but it's unfair to gatekeep it from the people who helped to buy it. They wouldn't answer that and threatened that Pete wouldn't be allowed at their house at all if they were asked again, which Pete would hate to hear since he loves their house, so I left it at that. Pete was pissed to say the least, and loved to rant at anyone who listened while gaming with his friends about the situation. He asked if they could really do that and we should call the cops, but I told him let's not go that far yet, even though I agreed that those people basically stole from him. But he and Chris had been friends for nearly 10 years, and they do everything together, so I'd hate to see them be separated over something petty like this. So I came up with another idea, and I went shopping online and found an inflatable hot tub for about the same amount of money they spent on the pool. It might have been just as petty. I dipped into a bit of my savings, but I bought it. Could I have bought the pool myself? Maybe, but at the same time, Pete wanted it bad and I got other things to worry about, and he's learning to work for what he wants, and a hot tub's good for my back. Pete's been in the hot tub nearly every day since it's been set up. His friends are welcome inside too. My only rule is they got a shower at their own houses before or after they get in. It's big enough for like 5 people. John and Chris have been over a lot to go in the hot tub, and their parents have noticed. John's dad is totally okay with it and thinks that what Chris's parents are doing is bullshit too, but agrees that they still get the reward for all their work with a hot tub. Chris's parents, on the other hand, aren't too happy. Chris told me himself that he prefers to be in the hot tub with his friends rather than swimming alone in his pool, and his parents don't understand that. I haven't spoken to them directly about this, but Chris has heard rants from his mum about how everyone thinks they're some kind of child-hating monsters for not allowing anyone in their pool that they didn't buy. It hasn't helped that Pete still loves to rant about it too, and he knows a lot of the neighborhood kids who also come to dip in the hot tub. I do see Chris's mum at the store sometimes, but she doesn't make eye contact with me anymore. I know it was petty, but am I the arsehole here? Edit. Holy shit, this blew up a lot more than I thought. Thank you all for your input. I wanted to clear up some things in an edit. I'm a 30-year-old man. Chris's parents are pretty wealthy. I really don't think the water bill or anything they're paying for with that pool is going to break them. Yes, I know Peter's owed his money back for his pool, but we're on thin ice as is with Chris's parents, and I'd hate to make things even worse. He hasn't really asked about getting his money back. All he really wanted was to use the pool. No small claims court is out of the picture right now. It'd be a waste of everyone's time and money, and to be honest, the only people who aren't satisfied with this outcome are Chris's parents. And I'm not gonna vandalize the pool. A commenter suggested, empty the pool and put it in someone else's yard. Commenter says, Chris's parents should reimburse Pete and John and / or the pool move to your house. Another commenter says, not the arsehole. Chris's parents essentially tricked two 14-year-olds into funding and setting up a private pool for their kid under the guise of liability. Buying the hot tub was a top-tier move that gave your brother what he actually earned, while letting Chris's parents enjoy the empty, lonely pool they stole. Another one says, not the arsehole. And you can tell Chris's mum that nobody thinks they're child-hating monsters, but you all know that they're thieves who steal from children. So it was 10 days after this that OP came in with a first update and says, so the overall response I got to the last post was very unexpected, and I appreciate everyone's input. This has been a weird situation for everyone involved. I wanted to clarify something about the pool first. It's not inflatable. It's one of those frame pools that you set up and then fill up. I'd say it's around 15 foot round, at least big enough to fit 3 teenagers and 2 adults all at once. And like I said before, the only reason we set it up in Chris's parents' backyard is that my backyard isn't that big, so the pool would be crossing into our neighbor's yard. John and his dad live in a townhouse, and Chris's family lives in a big house with at least 2 acres of open land around them. Obviously, they have the most room. I couldn't believe the number of people who suggested draining the pool or slicing the pool open. I get the idea, but that thing cost the boys like over $400 altogether. Since I last posted, Pete and his friends have still hung out in that hot tub. Also because people were curious, it wasn't on most of the time, so they still cooled off. They'd like to leave it off and then turn it on when they got too cold. The ironic thing is, it's been raining this past week, so neither the pool or hot tub has been used much. But the effects of Poolgate are still in effect, as Pete and John were talking about how they could use it without having to deal with Chris's parents, who still never let them near it. The one thing that nobody has done yet is call the police, because what's the point? There was no contract signed, the boys paid in cash, and we all mutually agreed to set it up in Chris's backyard, so legally they're all cleared to do what they want with it, especially because they use their water to fill it up. Ethically, they're arseholes, but legally, the police can't do anything if they claimed that they bought it, and we have no real proof that it's mutually owned. John's dad, who was angrier than I thought he was, actually ended up making several posts on Nextdoor and Facebook, basically outing Chris's parents for stealing the pool. The Facebook post got some pretty good attention for like a few days before he took it down, but suffice to say, a lot of our mutuals know about it now. I got a lot of messages asking about Pete, especially from the people he worked for. I didn't put any of my own thoughts because, to be honest, I thought this was all behind us with the hot tub, but the more I thought about it, the more I understood that a hot tub wasn't enough. The boys worked hard for that pool, and they at least deserved their money back if they couldn't use it. But then on Friday, Pete told me that Chris let him know that the previous night he had to help his dad drain and dismantle the pool. It was only used sporadically and not for more than a month. Chris had to help his dad throw the whole pool in the neighbor's dumpster. We had to go over and check it ourselves to believe it. Saturday afternoon, with John and his dad's help, all 4 of us managed to pull everything out of the dumpster, and we brought it back to John's house. They, as mentioned, don't have the room to set up the pool in their backyard, but they do have a shed, and John's dad is letting them store it there for the time being. John's dad has a pickup truck, so it wasn't that hard to transport it. Chris had no idea, and neither did his parents, but we both did get some questioning texts asking if we took the pool. Neither of us denied it. Pete hasn't been able to talk to Chris ever since because I assume his phone's been taken away, and he'd been occupied with other things. That's my way of saying, of course he was grounded. Understandably, everyone is pissed now. John's dad and I are pissed, especially that those guys just up and tried to throw away something that these boys earned by working. The boys are pissed that not only have they been prevented from using the pool, except for Chris, but their hard work has been literally thrown away because his parents don't want to be responsible for it. The parents are beyond pissed that they were publicly shamed and that their son snitched on them, and we got to the pool before the dump truck did. And yes, we did get questions by neighbors when we were digging in the trash. We told them the truth. The worst part is, because the weather's getting colder, there's no point in trying to set up the pool anywhere else, even if we could. Thankfully, they still have the hot tub. So now, as it should have been from the beginning, John's dad and I are going to sit down and talk with Chris's parents about what compelled them to try and get rid of the pool like that, instead of just letting the boys use a thing they bought, and also find out exactly what the issue is behind the whole situation. I have a feeling it's not going to go well. If they won't at least refund the boys, which we're going to demand, then we're both taking them to small claims, which we both know we might get screwed with considering they can afford good lawyers and neither of us can. All we want is $300 split between Pete and John, and then this whole thing will be behind us. It sucks that Pete and Chris's friendship may be over after this, but it isn't either of their fault. So this update made Chris's parents just look so much worse. The original situation had at least one legitimate concern, if I'm being honest, and it's only because of the stories that we've covered in the past, which was the whole liability thing. What happens if other people's kids got hurt while swimming on our property? All that kind of thing. We've covered it many times, and liability always comes up. Put a fence around in case someone gets in your pool, etc, etc. So I kind of got that a little bit, whilst always knowing that this was always going to escalate and the parents were always going to be a-holes in some form. But when they threw the pool away, I mean, what problem are they solving by putting a $400 plus pool in the dumpster? It just felt petty and nasty to me. And I feel really sorry for the kids in this, the teenagers. Their relationship is getting damaged while this is going on at the same time. But a commenter says on the back of this one, most small claims courts do not allow lawyers. My parents sued in small claims court once. The defendants brought a lawyer. Once my parents pointed him out, the judge told him to leave. Opie says, we'd probably be screwed anyway, since we all agreed to be it on their property. Commenter says, info. Did the boys have the parents' permission to set up the pool there? Opie says, yep. We all sat down together for dinner with them and made the plans. Everyone left satisfied. Commenter says, did they get a permit to have it in their yard? Usually required by city, and usually required to have a fence around it, again by city, not the arsehole. Opie says, yeah, I think they did. Commenter says, if the pool was on Chris's parents' property, then the homeowner insurance is what covered any injuries or drowning that could have occurred, correct? Is that why they didn't allow anyone else in the pool when they had it? The liability. Opie says, from what I understand, it was just about safety. Commenter replies saying, then why the fuck did they agree to have it on the property if they weren't going to allow the boys to use it? Opie says, beats the shit out of me. Downvoted commenter says, not the arsehole, and I wouldn't have let Chris come and enjoy my hot tub. He had a whole pool to himself at his house. It was being held hostage by his parents, so that the people who purchased it were banned from using it and enjoying it. Plus, they chucked something that they knew the three boys bought together. Instead of asking you or John's parents if you could house it somewhere, they chucked it. But they were super happy for Chris to come to yours and enjoy your hot tub. Charge this Chris boy each time he comes over. Opie says, Chris is a real bro to Pete. That's not happening. It's not right to punish him for his parents' actions, don't you think? Commenter says, what gave them the right to put the pool up in Chris's backyard? Was the yard fenced in? Safety should have been involved here. Opie says yes, they have a fence around their property. So Opie comes in with another update and says, we had our conversation. John's dad, who I'll call Russell, and I showed up at Chris's parents' house after work under the guise of trying to mend whatever problems haven't been settled over this whole pool thing yet. We've all known each other for about as long as the boys have. It's about 8 years for John and 7 for Chris. It's not like we're strangers, so it wasn't uncomfortable. We got offered some drinks and we sat down, and the first thing I asked was, what was this all about? We wanted to focus on the fact that we dumpster dived to get our pool back, but we were firm that we knew this wasn't about the pool. Chris's dad, who I'll call Greg, was mostly quiet the whole time. He just sat back and nodded while his wife, who I'll call Lorraine, spoke for the both of them. I asked if they were really okay with the boys setting up the pool in their yard to begin with, and they both looked at each other before saying no, they weren't. They both thought it was a waste of money, and pools are a seasonal item, so they should have bought something that they could use year-round. Russell said they should have said that when we all agreed, including them, to set it up. They said it made Chris happy, and they thought he deserved something he wanted for all his hard work. Lorraine mentioned that at the end of the day, they felt pressured to do it. Then we got into the whole liability thing, and if that was really why they won't allow anyone but Chris in the pool. Lorraine kept claiming yes, that was the reason, despite our attempts to tell her we could have worked something out if she wanted them supervised. It didn't matter. We both just wanted to give the boys what they worked for, and they're the ones who were preventing that. And we wanted to know the truth about why. She went on to say that she wasn't happy with the idea of a pool in their backyard because A, she was actually planning on building a greenhouse in the same space, and B, they were both concerned that having a pool would be a distraction. Like Chris would want to spend more time outside in the pool getting sunburnt and all that than staying inside and studying when school started. It was all another excuse to stay away from the books, and this would give Chris's friends, including Pete and John, reasons to trespass on their property. Lorraine brought up when Pete snuck in the pool without permission, and apparently it was such a big deal that it warranted second thoughts on keeping the pool at all. We were dumbfounded. They've never acted like this before in all the years we've known them, and honestly, I didn't buy that explanation, and neither did Russell. Greg supported her comments, but they could see that we were unsatisfied with that answer. We wanted to know if they had something against either of our boys. Lorraine then asked if she could be honest with both of us. I had a feeling we were going to get answers, so I said yes, hit us with your best shot. She said that they both believe that Pete and John are bad influences on their son. That as they've gotten older, Chris has become louder, more vulgar, and less willing to join them on their own family activities. That our boys, primarily John, are loud, violent, and smart-mouthed, and they've always felt that Chris should look for new friends. That they're concerned that the things and words that Chris has learned from our boys are going to impact him in the long run and ruin his chances of the life they, I guess, have always dreamed for him. Then she went on this tirade about how they have planned Chris's future already. He's going to get into a top university that they've already prepared to pay for. He's going to get a good job after he graduates, meet a woman and get married, have kids, and essentially live a normal adult life. All this apparently is never going to happen because of Pete and John. We were silent. Lorraine kept saying, I'm sorry, over and over again, and that we wanted to know the truth, and it's just a concern they have. Russell spoke first. He asked if they've always felt this way, and Greg said in a way, yes. It wasn't that bad when they were little and just hanging out at school, but as the boys have gotten closer, it's become a problem. When asked what exactly is so bad about these teenage boys, Lorraine again mentioned their mouths, their violent tendencies, their habits, like video games, and all the usual stuff you hear that's bad for growing kids. They also said that, in their opinion, both of them are missing things in their lives that they believe will keep Chris out of trouble when he gets older. They were of course referring to mother figures. Pete's never had a relationship with our mum, and John's dad is divorced, and John's mum lives in another country with his sister. So because neither of them had a wise, loving mother to powder their little asses and warm their bottles like Chris does, they're bad kids. Oh, and because they're devout Christians and neither of us go to church, that was brought up too. They've just kept their mouths shut about these problems the whole time for the sake of their friendship. And Lorraine dropped this little bomb. She basically implied that they have the means to give Chris a proper future, meaning money, and just because we don't for our boys, that doesn't give us the right to try and bring Chris down to our level. Our level, according to her, is not having the means to care for children properly, denying them opportunities and all these different little nitpicks about our lives that, in their opinion, reflect on Pete and John and their attitudes that Chris has learned from them. Now, we were pissed. Russell actually got up and raised his voice, and I had to restrain him and calm him down a little bit. Greg threatened the police if there was any trouble, and that's not how we wanted this night to end. Lorraine was crying and kept saying I'm sorry again and again. When he calmed down, Russell spoke in a pretty low voice and told them both that we all have different situations, and we're raising these boys in our own ways. If there's something they don't like about either of our boys, you don't hold it against them, you mention it to us. That's how I'm going to grow as a parent at least, and nothing about either of our situations gives them the right to say these boys are bad influences. None of them have been to prison or had the cops called on them or anything. We had to remind them of our histories. I asked them to consider that I'm Pete's brother, not his parent, and I wasn't prepared to raise him when I took him in. I had no choice other than putting him into the foster system. Russell brought up personal problems he had with his ex-wife and a distant relationship with John. We both said we're doing our best raising these boys, just like they are. But if they're so concerned about how they're being raised, what makes them think they're any better just because they have more money? And if they want to compare our kids so badly, then let's do it. Chris is constantly on his phone, because Lorraine always wants to know where he is and what he's doing. Chris doesn't like to stay home all the time. Chris always takes junk food from either of our houses. Chris would rather hang out with his friends in a hot tub than swim in a pool that was 4 times bigger. The only extracurriculars Chris does for school are the ones his friends do. Chris was introduced to and now loves all these geeky things that Pete and John love, and he taught them things he likes. And why were the boys working together to buy a pool to begin with? Because they wanted another reason to hang out with each other despite the heat. And now they both went silent. Had these ashamed look on their faces, especially Lorraine, who just kept crying. Now on to the main point. How gatekeeping the pool and then throwing it away when it wasn't being used for the one person they let inside. It wasn't how they were going to treat these boys anymore. Not ours and not theirs. That's when Greg asked if we're going to tell them how to parent their kid now. Russell and I both emphasized that the way they're treating Chris is actually setting him up for failure in his life. He already has self-esteem issues being a teenager. He needs to be able to make his own choices. When asked what choices, I asked if they were sure he even wanted to go to college when he got older. Greg said he won't have a choice, that they worked too hard to let him pass any opportunity just because he was influenced to do something different. And that's what they're trying to do to avoid with Pete and John. They're on board with him working, but helping to buy a pool wasn't what they had in mind. That's what exactly they expected him to buy with the money. They didn't really have an answer, just something different. Suffice to say, this wasn't a nice conversation, and we excused ourselves out before either of us said anything that we'll regret, or do something that warrants the police being called, because believe me, we both felt like punching Greg. We never demanded anything from them or threatened legal action like I mentioned in my last post. I kinda said that out of anger, so I apologize for that. Me and Russell spent a while in his truck just talking about what we can do. What they've done and said wasn't cool, but we had to be careful. We can't control how they raise Chris, but they can try to control who Chris can hang out with. They have every right to ban Pete and John from their house if they want to. They didn't have to pay for his extracurriculars if they don't want to. They could even move houses if they want to. At the end of the day, it was all about keeping the peace between the boys, which hasn't been a problem because they're all on the same page. In fact, Russell and I both agreed that the boys were behaving more maturely than any of us were, and we laughed at that. So for right now, we're going to spend some time thinking of what else we could do. If anyone has any advice, I'd love to hear it, but the one thing I know we have to do is talk to Pete and John, and if possible, talk to Chris. His parents can try all they want to, but Chris is a smart kid. Grounding him isn't going to keep him from staying in contact with his bros. And I have a strong feeling he got some interesting things to say about his parents, but again, we're not doing anything until we have solid proof and a solid plan. One of the top commenters says, "Poor Chris, his parents are awful. They don't want him to be a kid. The more they try to control things with his life, then he'll rebel against them. I wouldn't be surprised once he's officially an adult, he cuts them off if they continue this." Another commenter says, "I think the only real thing you can do is make sure your house is a safe place for Chris. You can't change his parents' mind, they're set in their ways, but you can always let Chris know that he has your support and can be a trusted adult to talk to." I'm going to assume that nothing Chris does will be good enough for his parents, unless it's the way they envisioned it to a T. And like you said, he's a teenage boy with self-esteem issues. It's only going to get worse under that type of parent. But having a good outside system will be helpful and impactful in the long run. I wish you the best of luck. One more commenter says, "Wow. Someone mentioned under one of your previous posts that it feels like this was all related to classism, and boy, were they right. This is really sad. Poor Chris. I hope he continues his friendship with your brother and his friends, but I can imagine that it would be difficult to do this with parents like his. He'll either conform to their will or he will distance himself from them when he is old enough to do so. But this is also really sad for your boys to learn that people think less of them for things they have zero control over. It's a hard lesson to learn this young. Please protect your brother. You don't want them to say something that will make him think less of himself. You did everything you could. These parents are classist arseholes, and there is no cure for that." Oh my word, as we got to the end there, this really brought back some memories for me. And this is really sad for the kids in this situation. And it reminded me of growing up on the council estate, which I've mentioned several times. If you're new here, I grew up in a council estate, which was pretty wild from time to time. But in this, whenever someone dragged out a swimming pool in the summer, every kid around the area, it's like they could smell it. And they would turn up and would chuck washing up liquid in it and go absolutely feral. One kid that I've mentioned in previous stories before, nutty as a nutty biscuit, once made like a slip and slide out of some plastic sheeting that he found and sort of like put it towards the fence panel next to a swimming pool. I can remember this clear as day because he was always doing stupid shit like this. This was the guy that got into like a barrel into the river and the barrel just turned over. But this guy, he put the sheeting down and he put it against a fence panel at the end. The idea that it would stop him, I guess. Okay, you can already hear where this is going. So he made this sheeting, chucked like washing up liquid water down it so it was slippy as you like, and then went flying down at legs first and went straight through the end fence panel. Yeah, but slightly off topic. But beside our estate was a much posher area of Oxford, and a bunch of us were friends with a lad who lived there. He was our age and would get invited to his birthday parties, and we originally met him because we went to the same first school as him. And so we went to his house and everything seemed completely normal when we were on his side, but he was never allowed to come over to ours. Sometimes he'd walk past with his mum because you had to walk through our area to get to his house, and we'd ask if he was coming out to play, and the answer was always no. And eventually he just sort of vanished from our lives. And looking back as an adult now, it's actually really sad, and I hope he's doing well because he was incredibly gifted. I believe he ended up going to college early, but as a kid you don't really understand that someone's parents may think you're the wrong sort or it's a bad area or something like that. You just kind of gradually realize that your mate isn't coming out anymore. And it's kind of what bothered me about this update. The pool is almost kind of irrelevant now because Chris's parents have apparently decided that Pete and John are unsuitable because of their backgrounds, their families, money, religion, and the fact that they're normal, loud teenage boys. They've even mapped out Chris's entire adult life to the point where his dad says he won't have a choice about university. And the heartbreaking part is Chris clearly likes these boys. He helped earn the pool because he wanted something they could enjoy together. He'd rather sit in a little hot tub with his mates than have a massive swimming pool to himself. Even after his parents threw the pool away, he was the one who secretly made sure Pete knew what had happened. Kids don't care that one of the friend's parents have 2 acres and another lives on a council estate, or that someone's being raised by his brother rather than his mum. They care that Dave has the football, Pete's got a PlayStation, and that someone's mum just shouted that there's ice lollies in the freezer. That was classic around my area. And sometimes, as happened with the lad that I knew, the friendship doesn't even end with an argument or anything like that. One child just slowly disappears from the other's lives because the adults have made maintaining it just impossible. And I really hope that isn't where this is heading for Chris, Pete and John, because like OP keeps saying, they're bros in this. And like one of the commenters said, that he's either going to conform or he's going to rebel. But I hope OP keep an open door for him as well to be able to express himself and just be there for him if needed. And I hope these guys really do stay together. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the world to me. So thank you so much for being here. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.